Hello and welcome once again to the How Long to Beat podcast. As always, this is Rick joining you alongside Alex and Paula. And we're going to breeze through the first part of the podcast because actually, beaten and retired, which is what we normally start with, there's very slim pickings. And then we'll crack on with what we've been playing. And there's something we've all been playing that I'm very excited to talk about. We're going to move on to the topic this week, which off the back of our discussion last week is strategy guides. And then we're going to finish with the brand new fire format of
How long to beat
the game.
The game.
Man, and
What happened?
oh, we need to do a proper light version of that. That's lovely.
Yeah, I'll have to do that at some point. Well, we should really just honestly, and like I think about this, we should really have just have some kind of epic recording of how long to beat the game being said out loud. But I love that every time we try, and one day it'll be
half the fun is that it's shit almost every time.
Exactly.
And speaking of how long it takes to beat games, Alex, you breezed through this game, so I don't think you've been playing it last week.
Oh,
Tell us
okay.
more.
Story about this. So,
Wait, yeah, actually, what happened there?
Yeah. Okay, so I beat. So people know what game I'm talking about here. I beat Super Mario RPG: The Legend of the Seven Stars, or is it just Legend of the Seven Stars? Whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, so I'm on my March break right now. So I was very lucky. I have two jobs technically at the moment because I'm doing my practicum and then I teach classes in the evening, and they both just happen to like line up with the week off at the same time, which awesome.
Beautiful.
But I'm really, really, really bad at giving myself like an actual just time off. Like I don't really do that. I'm very like type A where I'm gonna get things done. So like frankly, the entire March break I treated just basically like a work week. Like I every day was like doing work hours, and I got a ton of shit done, and it was great because I find I can't really relax very well unless, I've completed the things that I need to do essentially. So like, let's take care of the house, getting everything done. So like I'm like totally prepped and prepared for like the rest of my practicum. But I told myself at the end of that, I was like, you need to just not do things for like a full fucking day at least. And so I was like, so on Friday night, I got into a little bit of the old Mary Jane, and I could not play Elden Ring. I was like trying to play it, and I was like, I'm fucking dying too much. My like motor like reflexes were horrible. And then I was like, you know what? I was waiting for some. I've been modding the Wii U, but I was waiting for some flash drives to come in to just put all the games on easily. And I was like, you know what? I have my SNES Mini, and that thing is awesome because it's got the HDMI. So like on the 4K TV, I use the CRT filter, and it's in like the pixel kind of perfect mode with the CRT filter, and it looks gorgeous. Like it really looks beautiful. And I find what's nice is that it doesn't because I don't know, sometimes on HDMI some of the SNES games can look a little too crisp. You're like, ooh. I see where you were hiding those rough edges, but the CRT filter that they've included within the SNES Mini is really good because it's subtle. It's not like, ooh, there's big jagged lines coming along. It's just like, no, everything's just going to be a little fuzzier, but in a very nice way. So I was like, I'd seen Super Mario RPG, and I was like, I need something that's like simple for me, and also it's been on my backlog forever. So I was like, you know what? Let's start playing it a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to do work until I beat this game. So I was like, I'm just going to give myself time. It's not that long. Like it's like 17 hours. And then, but with the save states and shit, I cut that down to 16 pretty easily because there's some stupid shit in the game. But anyway, this is a super adorable game and really holds up, honestly. Like not only like mechanically, but graphically, it looks beautiful still. It's that isometric perspective, kind of in that like almost like Donkey Kong Country style graphics, right? That like faux 3D look that was a big thing on the SNES. And I don't know, it's just like very, very charming and actually quite funny in like very endearing ways. And like you can see the lineage of the later Mario and Luigi games, like those RPGs in here. I do think that like if I were to kind of like rank the Mario and Luigi games and like put this game within it, this one would be like pretty high up on my like listing, simply because of like the characters they introduce in this are really, really compelling. And Mario and Luigi games always do that as well, but something that I think is sort of missing from those games is the ability to have a party of other characters, right? And then so in this one, you're introduced to Gino, who's like, character that just seems to be forgotten by time. But anyway, Gino, and then there's Mallow, who's very cute, and then you've got Princess Toad. It is funny, you can tell when this is made because it's Princess Toadstool, not Princess Peach, right? Even though it is Peach, but and Bowser, of course. So you've got like this lovely troupe that you're using, and RPG mechanics, but it's that timed hits as well. But they really don't like. They'll give you a little explanation of the attacks, like you need to press this button at this point. But for the most part, they're just like, figure it out, boy. Like they don't telegraph it, like in like the Mario and Luigi games, there's like a fair bit of telegraphing, which I do think is helpful. But in this one, they're like, no, just figure it out. And I'll be honest, I never really figured out how to defend against some of the attacks because like you're never sure when to hit. You're like, do I do it right before he hits? What is considered right before you hit when it's a giant animation? You're like, I don't know. But it didn't really matter. I've heard some people say that kind of level against this game that it's like too easy, that it's kind of like like a child's RPG kind of thing, which like I can kind of understand where they're coming from in that sense, where like, yeah, it's not an overly difficult game in the sense that they're pretty fair in giving you coins. You don't really level up that much though. Like I beat the game, I think at level 22 or 23, something like that anyway. And I was probably over leveled actually, because like the final was not that difficult. Yeah. So it's a very slow leveling progression system. It's not about like getting crazy high levels really fast. It's like, no. You just need a few levels here and there. Which can make fights feel a little odd sometimes though, because like sometimes you fight and you're like, I got 2 experience for that. What? And even some boss fights, I'd get like 5 experience, and I was like, "What the point of the boss was?" Whatever, But it does require strategy. It's just the thing is like if you've played a number of RPGs, you'll figure out that strategy pretty quick, right? Like it's not going to be super difficult for you to figure these kind of strategies out. But at the same time, the enemies pack a fucking punch. Like a number of them do. And so you do have to consider like who's in my party, how am I switching them up, who's doing health management, like what equipment are they wearing, right? Like if you play the game properly, then yeah, it's not super difficult. It's just challenging enough. But I don't really think that's a critique of the game. Like the game is well balanced, basically, And I think I do think this would be like a really great introduction RPG to someone because it is challenging, but it's not unfair. And for me, it was perfect because I just wanted something like this game felt like palate cleanser. I'm playing goddamn Tunic and Elden Ring right now. I need a fucking palate cleanser sometimes. Like as much as I love those games, there's a period of time where you're like, I just need to play something that's fun and makes me feel like I'm really good at it. So yeah, that's kind of, and all the environments are adorable. I love that the kind of world map, it like kind of wraps around and you meet all these like fun characters. The mini games are trash. I will say that. There's a series of mini games throughout this that are borderline just absolutely garbage. Like there's this Yoshi race that is fucking ridiculous. Like I guess if you have extremely good rhythm, maybe it's fine. But I also have to say, like, I don't think I have a lot of latency when I'm playing, but I'm pretty sure there's some latency because I have one of the 8BitDo like wireless ones, and it's good, but like I get the sense that there's at least a tiny bit of latency with especially with the fucking nice TV and everything. It's like this is not how this game was designed to be played. So some of the mini games I was just like, it's just not happening. Like I'm just, if it's something that revolves like rhythm really going really fast, I'm like, no, there's no fucking way it's gonna work. And the rhythm didn't make any sense. There's like a whole video online of people like showing how to like do it properly because like they're like, you need a trick for this because it's messed, but it doesn't even really give you anything important, so it's like there's no point, just skip it. So yeah, I don't know. Have either of you played this game?
Can't say I have, although I'm same as you. It's been on my backlog for a long time. I like the Mario RPGs that I've played, and it's been sort of on my radar. Interesting to see how short it is, because I'd sort of assumed it would be double that, being a Square RPG from that kind of period of time.
No, and that's why I think I like it so much. It's concise, They don't.
And that's always that's always been a benefit of the Mario RPGs. They are quite tight experiences. I remember I played Superstar Saga not that long ago, and that sort of fell around the 20-25 hour mark. I think
Yeah.
I had the same feeling with Cosmic Star Heron. I think more RPGs would benefit from streamlining themselves a little bit more rather than trying to make this grand epic and losing players at the halfway point.
Exactly, because like what I feel about this game is that by the time I was at the end, I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." Actually, like I'm just now starting to get to that point where I'm like, "Okay, we're kind of in the gauntlet mode," where it's like, it's the end and you just got to get through these things. But I'm like, but really, I was only, that's about a 15-hour mark. I'm like, that's a pretty good point to be at the end there. Like,
Mm.
if it had kept going, I think I would have been like, oh, fucking hell. I also did play this in like a couple sittings basically. But that's something you can do with this game. Like this is a game that you could honestly, like, if you have a weekend and you somehow have just all this time off, it's kind of a great game to just bust out. Like I was watching videos and stuff, watched a few movies too on my phone as I was doing it, and like it's kind of perfect for that. You can just kind of sit there and be like, all right, I can get through it. Paula, sorry, have you played this one?
No, I haven't played it. I haven't really played any of the Super Mario RPG series. Now that I
No?
think about it. No.
I mean, I really recommend them because like there's nothing quite like them, um in the sense like what Rick was saying. They're just very I don't know, they're like unique, not particularly intensely difficult, but not so easy that you don't have to pay attention, right? Like you do have to, and like the action buttons make it, I think, a bit funner. You're actually like engaged within the turn-based combat.
Well, they're streamlined, right? Because you don't really
Yeah.
do party management. You have the same guys the whole way through. Broadly speaking, all your moves are item based. So it's very focused on the RPGing of it rather than the party and the inventory. You have new equipment; it doesn't really matter all that much. The way you go through games, pal, you'll slip and beat 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's really not not a
Super Mario,
big commitment.
I think Super Mario RPG is different in that regards because you do have party management. Like you have 5 people, but you don't actually have to. Everyone gets XP, so whoever's not in your party doesn't matter. It's really just up to your preference of like who you want to be using and whose movesets are going to be used. But then inventory, you do have to manage it a bit because, and I think this is just a SNES thing where it's like the items that they had, you had a limit on them, and I'm pretty damn sure that was just because it was probably just a technical thing where it's like you can't have 300 items. God damn it! Like you can have 2 big sheets of them, and that's fine. But it actually kind of works because it encouraged me to actually just use my items because, frankly, you could always restock on them if you needed to. So that was nice. But yeah, I think it's a perfect length. I gave it like personally like an 8 out of 10 just because some of those mini games were just dumb as shit, and I was like, I don't like those. But in terms of the game itself, like it's just a very, very fun and a game that holds up very well nowadays. Like in terms of RPGs on the SNES, I'm like, oh yeah, like as I was playing it, I was like, oh, this shit holds up like Chrono Trigger does, Chrono Trigger is obviously a better game. But in terms of like appeal to play nowadays, I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. Both those games, easily you can play them today and just be like, this was super fun. And that's exactly what I did.
Nice.
So
Or
anyway,
maybe I just
Yeah.
put that one on my will play it someday list.
Yes.
Right? Because right now the backlog is pretty intense.
Yeah. Is it on Nintendo Switch Online? I feel like it isn't. I can't remember.
If it isn't, it's got to be soon.
I think it's not. Actually.
I think it's the Square thing. I think that's the rub, right? But
right.
It was on the Wii shop, wasn't it? I don't know about the Wii U
for
one, but it was
sale,
definitely on the Wii shop.
yeah.
Even then, I mean, like they'd find a licensing thing, they'd work it out.
Yeah, but it's on the SNES Mini, so if you got one of those,
Again, evidence, if any, that they would find a way to work it out.
yeah. If it is there, play it. If not, oh my god, you can emulate it so easy. All right, Paula, tell us about Fire Emblem.
Well, I finished Fire Emblem Awakening, and it only took me about 20 hours, counting like all the couple of restores I have to do. And
Nice.
I only lost like 3 units, which were revealed. The mage you get early on because well, things happened and suddenly she fell to a critical hit.
Ooh.
And I wasn't gonna restart that chapter, not in a long shot. And I also, well, kind of sacrificed Frederick and Sully on that one chapter. I said, hey, I'm kind of having trouble getting all my units to the end, like getting my couple of strong units to beat this boss. So I guess I'm gonna train these two guys up to have like less squishy units to protect my more squishy units, and they fought valiantly and they fell in combat. And all the other units survive up to the end of the game. Beautiful. So I would call that a success. I was trying not to restart the game too many times because I was like, nobody have time for a perfect run for Fire Emblem. At least not me, because I am marathoning the shit out of them. Anyways, Fire Emblem Awakening overall has a decent story. Fire Emblem isn't really known for the story, more for the gameplay and the strategizing. But this one I feel it's kind of above average, or at least it's enough to keep you engaged and keep you okay, one more chapter. Okay, one more chapter. So that's why my hands slip and I beat it in a couple of weeks. Anyways, I feel like the pair up system is absolutely broken, especially in this game. They do try to balance them out in later entries, more on that later. But the thing is, once you have your units up to a certain level of support, they just break the game. Especially if you have the very strong units, pair them up together, put them in the middle of the field, and it is game over for your enemy. So yep, the revisit to the game was pretty fun. I wasn't expecting to get as engaged as I was, or get as invested as I was. But because of in my recent playthroughs of Fire Emblem: The Duality of the Holy War or the Blazing Blade, I was having trouble to jumping back into the game. But there's something in Awakening that just keeps you playing for a long time. Maybe until you beat it, but there's something there. So overall, I feel this is a very good entry point for beginners, and it is also a very good game overall. And I feel that even if the pair-up system is broken, the overall design of each level is well thought out, which at least on a couple of levels it balances the pair system being absolutely broken, just for a couple of levels. So
Yeah,
that was the one game I beat.
I was gonna say that was my intro to the Fire Emblem series, and I think it was a lot of people's introduction to the series.
Yeah,
I mean, the
it was
timing's
mine too.
interesting. That game was make or break for the series, and not only did it do gangbusters, but it also kind of changed it in a lot of ways with the whole sort of personification, sort of bringing social links and that kind of element into the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, dang, that's it for our beatings, and we don't have any retirements this week, so we're jumping right on.
Jackie Chan. It's been a busy old week for me. Why don't I start with that in the playing? And I want to start actually with what all three of us played. So, for the listeners, Alex and I kind of peer pressured Paula into buying Risk of Rain 2, so that we could have a 4-player party with my IRL younger brother, who is, if you can believe it, like me, but without the filter.
I mean, honestly, that's good description.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
And the other two guys were like, "Wait, you've got a filter? What?"
Hold on.
and then you met him and you realized, yeah, there is a filter there, believe it or not. So, I suppose first of all, Paula, how was your experience of the game? Having heard me and Alex talk about it, but playing it for yourself for the first time.
Oh, listening listening to you too didn't really give away anything or like really explain what the game was about in the sense of, hey, I wasn't expecting like a third person game for some reason. Like I was under the impression that it was like more of a first person game. That aside, the absolute chaos on each and every level, especially like the longer you play, cannot be put into words. So no matter how much you talked to me about the game prior to playing it, there was nothing you could do, guys, to prepare me for the actual experience. Still, in my first run with you guys, I was like, hey, I didn't know you had to like, I mean, I knew about the items, but I wasn't sure like how to pick them up. So I was like,
Oh yeah.
What about that?
yeah, like because like you explained me like the controls, and it was like, okay, the combat seems rather easy. And then it was like, hey, but you never explained to me how to pick up the items or what I needed for the items.
And for,
So
for some context, like in this game, you essentially like buy items that basically make it so you don't get your ass just completely handed to you. Like they're 100% necessary to keep going through the game. But yeah, I remember our first run, we all have all these items and Paula doesn't have any, and we're like, oh no.
The other three was had like a string of 20 each, and Paula literally had 2, one of which my brother had actively given to her because he's like, this specs really nicely with your build, come and pick this up. And I think that was the point at which we realised just how far behind Paula had fallen.
yep. So obviously, once we got to a certain level, I was completely squishy and practically useless in combat. The second one was a lot more fun because I actually was able like to buy the items before people got to them, so I didn't fall behind as much. I still did fall a little bit behind, but once I got used to the overall like control scheme of the game and to the character I was using, that it was the Huntress, things were like very, very fun and very, very chaotic. Those are like my first impressions of this one.
And how about you, Alex? Because you played a little bit. I don't know if this was your first 4-player game. Certainly, I think it was your first time playing with the non-potato PC.
Yeah, it was the first 4-player. And well, I don't know. Wait, did we play 4-player before? I know we played with
Maybe
others
that's
before.
kind of why I'm asking.
We
you,
did,
'cause I'm
yeah,
not
because
sure.
it was Abatage and Cock that we played with, I think, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
friends of the podcast, Sabotage and Cock.
So this is the first time that I was playing it like where I could actually fucking see what was going on, which made a big damn it's insane how big of a difference it is though, because like I would aim and shoot at things and my bullets would hit them. And it was like in the first one I'd aim and shoot and it'd be like, wait, what'd I miss? It was right there. And it was like, no, you silly boy. That's the lag on your computer. You're shooting at the air. So that was way better. And it was nice to play with a few folks who know what they're doing. Cause like I got there near the end of it. But the thing that's interesting with this game for me is that like, I still haven't quite figured out how to identify which enemies are like actually the stronger ones or not. Because like every time I would die, it was like, I'd be just shooting and going around, and then it was like I'm dead, and I was like, "What happened?" Like I was like, honest to God, like most of the time, I'm like, I know I messed up somehow, but I like genuinely have no idea how I just died. And then it'd be great because like either you or your brother would go, "Oh yeah, I just activated a combat shrine." I'm like,
I think a couple of times you activated it. To be fair, you're like, "Oh, what does this do?" And
I
then, like,
activated one,
3
but I
big
didn't die when I
Lemurians came.
did because I think what happened is that it's weird. It's the knowledge of like what's coming that like makes it a little easier because you get into there's like 2 modes in Risk of Rain, right? There's like these are just the normal enemies, I'm just gonna shoot the shit out of them, they can't do much to me, you know what I mean? Like there's that like harvesting the enemy, and then there's the like we got bosses coming and you're like, okay, I gotta be more evasive and like moving around and shit. And so like I kept anyway, I wasn't doing enough evasive maneuvers.
Yeah, and spatial awareness is everything in that game. Like you say, like there's the regular enemies and there's the bosses, and then there's like elite enemies in between. And if you don't spot them coming, they really can ruin your day.
Because they can wreck you like super fast, right? Like it can just be a second or two, and they're just like you're down.
Especially like with the combat shrine thing you activated, which we knew after you activated and we were already dead. But
I think it was the
Suddenly,
first
like,
level
the
as well. It's
enemies
like a load of stone
less
golems, and
pushy, like
Yeah.
like suddenly like the enemies were a lot stronger, and it was like, hey, it wasn't like this like a second ago, and suddenly there are like a lot of enemies. What the hell happened here? Oh yeah, that's a combat train item. And I was like, oh okay, never mind. I'm dead, because there were like those bison like thingies like just
Oh yeah.
ramming against everyone,
The
and I
music.
was just in the middle of it.
You know, I have to say, even when I die though, the music fucking slaps. So I'd just be sitting there going,
Mm.
That is
yeah,
true.
just jamming
Soundtrack is
it out.
someone else.
Yeah, it's really like, I don't know. I really like it. It was pretty fun to play because like I don't play multiplayer games that much, honestly. Like I play with some friends, like couch co-op. I'll do that from time to time. But like I don't know. I really dig this one because like I can totally get behind the cooperative multiplayer. Like that for me is like, okay, I like this because ultimately at the end of the day, I'm just like, I'm getting older, man. My reflexes aren't as good. I can't keep up with youngins on like competitive multiplayer games. I can't do that. Plus, it feels a little like, I don't know. Back when I felt like I had all the time in the universe, competitive multiplayer games felt more compelling. You know what I mean? Nowadays, I'm just like, looking at a game and I go like, I literally can only play so many games in a year. Is this going to be one of them? And so,
Yeah, I get
but
that.
that's with
Like,
Risk of Rain is that like it actually feels like I'm like, oh no, like we're playing a game, we're just doing this together, and like the roguelike nature of it, like really, it's very appealing for me. So yeah, I dug it a lot.
And the 4-player experience really is where it's at. Like you can play that game
Mhm.
solo and it's good fun, and you can play that game with a couple of people or 3 people, and it's better. But when you get a group of 4 together, those maps are really best experiences. That 'cause it's so much easier to cover all the ground and hit things within the time. And it has to be said, the devs have done a really good job of scaling
Yeah,
the combat threat depending on how many people you've got playing, and it's also scaling the money reward that you get to match. So in terms of the pacing, it actually feels broadly the same no matter how big your party is, which is always good. Um, there's also just like you said, with the roguelike nature, with the different items, with the sheer amount of characters you can unlock. So I mean, you two, because you've only just got the game, you've only got 3 or 4 characters available to you at any one point. But as you get through, and then if you get the DLC, you're talking 12, 14 characters
yeah.
at your disposal, and that's just another way that you can have so many different experiences um, with the runs. And to be fair, given how green you both are, we did really well. We got to stage 5, I think, both times. And they've made that way harder since the DLC came out, because normally I would breeze through that, but the new boss on stage 5 absolutely slaps. And I think both or all of the times I've faced it post update, we've been decimated by it, whatever party I've been with.
Because
So
I
I dread to
remember,
think what they've done with the final boss. Go
right,
on.
we beat it when I basically couldn't even do shit. Like we
And I
got to
think
the
that run we did, you all died, and I basically soloed the guy.
Yeah, and it was
yeah.
like the final, like it was past the yeah, like it was that like the final boss moment, and yeah, like we actually got there. But in this one, we're all doing fine, and like no, we could not get there. It was tough shit.
Nope.
Mhm.
But
It's a different strat. 'Cause he's a big guy. I think we'll get there eventually, but they've definitely bumped the difficulty up as well.
yeah,
But the
nice.
main thing is it's a very fun game,
Oh, it's very fun.
It is.
and it's nice to bring so many members of this podcast crew and of the community into this little world, because I feel like I've been a bit of an evangelist for this game, and it's nice, as it's been with 13 Sentinels and a few of the other ones where I get a little bit overhyped and I'm like, you have to play this. It's always nice when someone comes in and like, actually, this is really good. It's a warm fuzzy feeling, and that's really nice. I am gonna, unless you guys have got anything else you want to sort of throw into the hat with that. Good stuff. In which case, I'll blast through my playing, because not much has changed, to be honest. So, I am still actively playing, but have not progressed this week with Astral Chain for the Nintendo Switch, Days Gone for PS4, Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night for PC. I have played some more Kiwi. It's still lovely. We're in the final third of the game, and to be honest, we thought they were going to be sort of the way the game's structured. It has like seasons, and weeks within each season. So we finished fall. No, we finished summer. We finished fall. We kind of expected there to be a spring and a summer. The third season was winter. And there was another bit of the menu that looked a bit strange. I was like, oh, is that it? And so I went on the trophies, and yes, winter is the last season. We were actually a little bit sad. We were like, oh no. But I actually think that's probably for the best, because the way that they've structured it, I imagine they might run out of steam if they tried to stretch it to 4. And I would always rather, again, be a little bit shorter and not outstay its welcome. And I think Kiwi is absolutely going to fit that bill. We've played quite a few more of the extra sort of, what's the name they call them? Not odd jobs, but, single one-shot sort of inversions on the formula. And they're all a nice little distraction. With the exception of the rhythm game one, which was low-key broken, and I wasn't a fan of that. But, generally speaking, the game is a blast. It's really wholesome. It's full of charm. The game is compelling itself. There's a real sort of drive to get the gold times on everything. It really always feels achievable, which isn't always the case with 3-star systems like that. It always feels like, you're just one try away from getting it. And while it isn't, I think I said this last week, while it isn't the same quality as It Takes Two, in the sense that it just doesn't push the envelope as much. It isn't quite as polished. It's not trying to do as many things. In its own way, it is just as fun. It's just a different kind of experience. And if you've got someone to play it with, I cannot recommend this game highly enough. I've also played a lot more of The Witcher for PC. Still having a great time with this one, although the inventory management is starting to get really, really cumbersome. Fortunately, so you have 2 inventories in essence. You have an alchemy sack, which is where you put your alchemy ingredients, and then you have an everything else, which is all your potions, perishables, food, certain sort of quest items, saleable goods, valuables, and then there's a separate thing for key items as well. But that middle slot, like the everything else inventory, fills up rapidly. Excuse me. One really awkward choice, and I'm not quite sure what they made it, is every time you pick up a contract, for example, to kill 10 drowners, or that kind of thing where it's kill X number of Y enemy, those contracts take up a slot in that inventory. And there's a really tenuous argument that, that's supposed to incentivize you to only take a couple at a time. But fuck that. That's not a fair argument. And I call bullshit on that, because none of the other quests require you to have an equipable item. I think it's just a really, really negative choice. And it's something that you sort of actively have to work around a little bit. Now, in the game's defense, you have got a drop-off point at the inns, and that's accessible everywhere. It's like a magic chest type thing. Still, I'd say between 15 and 25% of my time has been spent in one form or another juggling inventory items, and that's not really the most compelling gameplay. However, everything else around it, really, really cool. The combat in its own way is quite engaging. I think it helps, and again, I think I said this last week, I think it helps that the game is sort of geared towards assessing what kind of threat you're going to be facing, preparing potions, and consuming potions accordingly. It's almost a prepare to plan, a fail to plan to fail situation. I think the game leads into that really well, and that complements the really excellent writing and quest structure that you work within. There's lots of multi-layered quests with different branches and failure points and stuff like that. There's lots of interesting ways that plays into the romance system and the dice poker system that they've got going there. Various other interconnected things that are going on within that world. I have spent sort of another 6 to 8 hours playing this game in the past week. Have barely progressed past the place I was at. Like, I think I'm about to end chapter 2 of 5. And when we spoke about it last week, I'd just started chapter 2 and had just got into that area. The world is so rich with stuff, and that is a real positive, and it's part of the reason that I've stuck with a game that really is starting to show its age, and the seams are starting to pull a little bit. Would I recommend it? Maybe. I think it all depends on your tolerance for the jank. For me, the story elevates it, and the everything else is fine. There's no one thing or confluence of things that's pulling it down enough for me. I definitely know a lot of people who played and loved The Witcher 3 who would have despised The Witcher 1 for all of its quirks and foibles and all of the ways that it is of its period,
Yeah.
or of the time that it came out. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are likely to be a bit more tolerant for that kind of thing. And there is absolutely a game worth experiencing in there. I gather that The Witcher 3 is very accessible without playing the previous two, so I think that's a your mileage may vary situation. Even if I end up dropping it at some point beyond now, I'm very glad I played it. I'm glad I experienced some of it as is. And the last game, saved this till last because it sort of ties into what you've been playing, Alex, and that is Mario and Luigi Partners in Time.
Oh yeah.
The second of the Mario and Luigi RPGs. I'm only an hour and a half in. I have got the babies now. So the way that this game differs from the other Mario and Luigi games is you time travel back to a era where you can collaborate with the baby versions of yourselves. And it's kind of adorable how you can already see the personalities coming through. The Mario baby's a bit more headstrong. The Luigi baby cries at the first sign of anything. But they really tie them in quite clever ways. So it's almost a puzzle solving mechanic, but it does also split into it in the way that combat works. So you can engage in combat either as the two big brothers, the two little brothers, or all four of them, depending on what's going on. And even on the basic jump attack, when you would ordinarily press the A or B button in time with the attack to do the extra damage, what you can do instead, if you've got the babies piggybacked when you go into combat, is you can press the corresponding baby button for them to do a little attack, and then the button for the big brother to attack. And they tie into the bro skills in various ways as well. It does a lot with what could have been a very superficial change. And again, that's always been the strength of those RPGs. They really do change a lot. Bowser's Inside Story is up next for me. I know that does a whole thing with you being inside Bowser's belly and playing with sort of what happens on his inside and how that affects him on the outside. I'm having a blast with this one, and I always expected I would. Again, if anyone's thinking of playing this and has a Rumble pack, it makes really good use of it. So absolutely take advantage of that. Certain flash carts can also emulate that Rumble functionality. So again, well worth checking if you have something that can do that for you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a really good time with it. Only negative at this point is the map screen could be better, but the game's designed well enough that it doesn't really matter. So I'm having a blast. Actually, with all of those, I've got a load of really great games on the go, which I am enjoying. Alex, why don't you jump in next? Because I want to know how BOXBOY and BOXGIRL are going, first of all.
Good. Yeah, I'm not like I don't know if I progressed a ton since last week. I probably should have listened to last week's episode to remember where I was. I think I only have a couple worlds left. Like I think I'm on like world 11 or something like that.
You've got maybe 4 of the main campaign. Again, there's 3 campaigns total.
Yeah, and I'm probably only going to go through the main campaign. I think.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm just wetting my whistle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just good. It's just good puzzling, you know? Like I don't have a whole lot to say on it because like you said, it is pretty simple, but like the ideas are compelling. I always feel like when I'm a little like, okay, I'm done with that one. It's like, all right, here's a whole new mechanic. And you're like, cool, let's go. You know? So I just like that. And I also think it's pretty cute, which really helps. Like it's a very nice chill, like it does challenge you to think outside the box enough. But I still find it's like a nice, like sit down, relax kind of game for me. And like, I'm taking it pretty slow. Like I don't know, probably beat it over the next few weeks, but like, it's nice to just like take a couple worlds, you know, take a few like stages and then just kind of set it down, you know, like it really suits that kind of play style. I find if you just kind of like sit down and try to go through all of them, you get a little overwhelmed, which is pretty common for puzzle games, right? But
For sure.
yeah, no, BOXBOY, BOXGIRL, good shit. I imagine it's pretty fun to play in co-op. Maybe I'll do that with my fiance at some point. We'll play some.
The co-op is lots of fun. Can confirm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, what else am I playing? I started Triangle Strategy. I think I talked about this a little bit last week. Gorgeous, absolutely beautiful looking, very fun. I haven't really made it much further because it's not really a game you can kind of just sit and watch something with because there's a lot of dialogue. So this is going to be my commute game. So next week you'll hear a lot more about Triangle Strategy, which I hear it's not even really that long for a single playthrough because there are many endings, I guess. So from what I hear, it's like about 20-ish hours for a single playthrough, which to me sounds like a good amount for a game like
For an SRPG is pretty short as well.
Yeah, exactly, right. Which I'm kind of down with that, you know. Like I love strategy RPGs, but I don't. Sometimes I'm like, give me a little less, please. You know, I'm at that point in my life where I'm like, I don't want a goddamn 80-hour saga anymore. I'm done with that shit. Just give me a tight, good story with some fun battles, and I'm happy. And that sounds exactly like
Speaking of which, Elden Ring.
Yes, because yeah, the opposite of the short thing. This one I'll probably be playing this until I'm dead. This game is it's so good. I beat Margit. He's the big, like, he's the first. So like the way Elden Ring works, really, there are bosses that are essentially like skill checkpoints, right? Where they're like, okay, so you've been playing for a little bit. Has that been luck, or do you know what you're doing? And this is one of them where he's like, come on, you got to use your right mechanics. And he is hard as fuck. But mostly he's hard if you're panicky and if you're not being conscious about your moves. Then he's difficult as shit. And he's still hard, even if you are good with that, right? But the nice thing is that, like, I basically went around and explored a bunch of Limgrave and like all these areas, and I leveled myself up pretty well. Like I think I'm like level when I beat Margit, I think I was like level 26 or something like that. I was like around there, which, you know, wasn't bad. I was really just through exploring and, like, you know, having some fun that I got to that point. But now I'm in Stormvale Castle, and these fucking knights. There's just some of these enemies are just so fucking pain in the arse. And, you know, the worst part is, it like, this game plays on your like, the guy might have something good though. So you're like, you know, like, technically you can run away, but I'm like, I'm not gonna run away. I'll beat him. I'll figure it out. You know. So I'm doing that right now. It's like everything people are saying about it is spot on. Like, it's just very good. I will say some of the control scheme stuff is kind of fucking dumb. Like, the lock on is really annoying and kind of works, but I'm like, for how vital that lock on is, I really wish there was like an easier way of doing it and like an easier way to switch between people, but whatever. And yeah, anyway, it's good. I don't know how I feel too about, like, I kind of wish my blog, there's like little things that I'm just like, I kind of wish that I could have this here. Like, I feel like it would be just like a little smoother to play through, but I also think that's probably for, like, Souls fans are probably just like are used to the kind of anachronisms of this game and like the kind of genre and the way that their control scheme works. But it's really funny because I'm also playing Tunic, and in Tunic you map your weapon to whichever one of the face buttons you want. So I used X because that felt kind of natural to me. But then, of course, in Elden Ring, X is the fucking item button. So when I go from Tunic and I go over to Elden Ring, I'll like hit and I go, no, that was my flask. Oh, I wasted a flask. You know, and you're like,
There goes your flask.
right? And I'm like, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta hit this thing, and then I'm dead. So I was just like, shit, okay, I gotta make sure I really space out Tunic and Elden Ring because they're mechanically kind of similar but very different. So anyway, I'm making good progress in Elden Ring though, and still really liking it. I think this is genuinely the, like, From Software game that, like, if you don't play From Software games, this is the most likely game to get you into them. Because I've been hearing people that I know hate these games are playing it, and I'm like, shit, yeah. Now, the thing that I do wonder is, will I beat this game? And that I don't know, because I've never really, I think I've beaten one Dark Souls game. I think in Dark Souls 3, I think, is the only one I actually beat. Which I don't know why that's the one game I beat, but I think I had that on the 360 back in the day, maybe the PlayStation 4 or something, and I went through and I beat the damn thing with a lot of help. But like Bloodborne and stuff, I just kind of felt. I also think Bloodborne's like the hardest of them all, to be honest. That game is hard,
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's the only one I own.
Oh, but it's also one of the best. So, there you go.
We'll see.
Anyway, but I bounced off of that and Dark Souls because I think Bloodborne, I just got fatigued. I literally got to a point where I was like, if I move forward, it's just going to be harder enemies. Like it's genuinely mentally taxing. And Elden Ring is the same thing. That's why I went and played Super Mario RPG, because it literally is at a certain point, you're just like, oh my God, I know it's just going to be stressful if I keep going. Like, can I keep going right now? Like, I genuinely need breaks from this game. So anyway, that's Elden Ring. I highly, highly recommend it though. Playing more Majora's Mask. I'm at the Snowhead Temple, the one with the Goron stuff. I'm there right now. Just got in there. Still blown away at how good this game looks with Neryl's HD textures. Like, it's just beautiful. So anyway, playing that, getting there. And actually, so speaking of Zelda a little bit, I was telling Paula this, but and I think you know as well, I got a Wii U. So Wind Waker is going to be on this soon. But I have to tell this story real quick because this is just, so I got this Wii U very cheap, which was excellent. And when I got it, of course, the guy hadn't factory reset it. Like, it had all this stuff on it. And I was like, I'm going to factory reset this thing because I'm just going to hack the damn thing anyway. So I was like, I don't need any of your old games on here. Like, I'm just going to, which also, word of advice to anyone who is selling a used console, especially if it's of a modern era, factory reset your console before you give it to someone, because like that dude had his credit card settings saved on there. And I'm like, buddy, you can't do this. Like, I'm like being the good guy, just like factory reset it for him. But I'm like, dude, I could have easily taken advantage of you and you couldn't have done anything about it because it would have been a legitimate purchase from you. So anyway.
Good advice for anything electronic. Wipe that shit before you sell it.
Yeah, honestly. Especially if you don't have wipe it. So anyway, I wiped it for him because I'm not like, I don't live that kind of life. So, but I quickly learned why the Wii U was a goddamn failure, because the gamepad connects to the Wii U system using a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection. Okay. Now, once you have connected to the Wii U, it's all good. But when you initially need to connect the gamepad to the Wii U, if there are any, and I mean fucking any Wi-Fi signals, even kinda close to that system, it will not connect at all. And you can't do anything until the gamepad connects. You cannot start the system with any other type of controller. You have to connect the Wii U gamepad to it to make it work. So I shut off literally everything in my goddamn apartment. My Wi-Fi was off, everything. But here's the problem. I live in an apartment. And in an apartment, Wi-Fi signals are fucking everywhere. And a little known fucking fact, in Japan, a lot of fucking people live really fucking close to each other. So I'm like, how did this ever work? I couldn't for the first hour or so, almost 2 hours, I was unable to get this thing connected. And you have to do this thing where you like press these buttons on the Wii U gamepad in like the right pattern on what's on your TV. So eventually I had this like brainwave moment where I went, wait a fucking second. Okay, I can't connect in this house. Oh, I have power outlets in the parking lot. Because
oh, you didn't.
I did.
You didn't.
I brought in a bag. I brought the Wii U out and I plugged the Wii U into our because in Canada, I don't know if it's the same, and I would argue probably definitely not in Chile, but I don't know, maybe in the UK. We have outside of every house, every apartment, like plugins, because our cars need heaters that heat the oil up, because our oil will get like jellified and will essentially not be able to turn over, and because it gets so cold.
Oh, dude, it's not that cold here. No.
That's
not a thing.
So we have those everywhere, and they're 100% needed. So every parking lot you'll see, and especially in houses and apartments, all have power outlets there as well, because you need them. So I went out back, plugged in the Wii U, turned on the gamepad, turned on the Wii U, waited 20 seconds, hit the sync button, and then put in the memorized code, and it fucking connected. And so outside I had to go through the setup and then bring it back in. And I couldn't believe it, because the hacking. So I hacked the Wii U and it was so easy. It took me 30 minutes or so following a video to fully hack this console. The hardest part was getting the fucking gamepad to connect. So honestly, nowadays I'm like, if you get one of these things from someone and they haven't factory reset it, I don't recommend factory resetting it because it's gonna be really hard to connect the gamepad. Just manually delete all their shit or something. Because I was like, oh my god. Anyway, that was my adventure. But I have Wind Waker loaded on that thing, and when I finish my practicum, I'm gonna be Wii U-ing the shit out of this for a little bit here. Because also another thing, and some might ask, Alex, why the fuck did you buy a Wii U? You really want to play Wind Waker that bad? One, yeah, I do. But secondly, the Wii can't connect to an HDMI connection without a converter. And there are some good converters out there that can like really upscale it and make it look beautiful. But they cost way more than a Wii U does. And a Wii U connects via HDMI. And I'll tell you right now, looks really nice. And it's got the Wii it's got like a VWii on there, virtual Wii on there anyway. So you can just play all Wii and GameCube games. And I'm like, oh, might as well just fucking play it on, the Wii U. So that's why. Oh, and I forgot, sorry, last thing, and I'm just going off here. Last thing, Tunic. Playing Tunic more. Thanks to it winning Game of the Month, I actually got back into it because I stopped at this Siege Engine boss. But then I've been chatting with Abatage about it because Abatage is like just about where I am in the game. And so now I'm at like a second large boss. This game's amazing. That's really all I have to say about it. It's really good. Great. Paula, actually, speaking of Tunic, Paula, you're playing it too, right?
Really, I haven't made a lot of progress like this week because it's one of those games that I'm playing with my boyfriend, and like we are playing another multiplayer game instead of Tunic, which by the way, it is the Wild 8. I got this game on early access. I don't know how long ago that was, but you can play by yourself or you can play with up to 7 other people. And each person chooses one of the available characters that has like their own strengths and weaknesses. So I got the character that is very good at collecting stuff and also has a higher chance of inflicting a critical hit, while my boyfriend has like the character that is more like combat oriented. And it has been a lot of fun. Like the times I played on early access, I feel the characters were killable in a way. Like they died more easily to anything. But now in the final release, pretty much you can actually play the game without dying like every other minute, which is nice. And we actually haven't died now that I think about it. Hopefully I didn't jinx that. And it is very much, you get dropped like with whoever you're playing, like in this plane crash or whatever. And you have to survive. And you're like given like little notifications of, hey, maybe you should go like maybe you should explore over here. And if you find like something that needs a generator, it's like, I wonder where can I get that? And then you start like following these I guess phone lines or electricity lines, which that's what we're doing now. And we found like this huge abandoned building, and we have like to explore inside of it to get like more resources to keep on living. I remember there being like some very scary creatures in this game that you eventually have to fight. Like the most we found right now are wolves, and I'm pretty sure I saw a bear once in other playthroughs, so I am carefully exploring the world because I don't want to die and have to like run all the way to the camp where we're staying. But overall, I think it has been a lot of fun. We've been exploring the whole map. We've been like, each one of us have like their own like chores to do so we can keep on living and keep exploring the map. And we've encountered like a certain character inside a building that I don't know what the story it is, but they are like enclosed in this space, and if you give them like, I don't know, armor, they will give you something in return. And it seems the better the armor is, the better things you get. So I didn't think there were gonna be NPCs on this thing, but they are. So hopefully we'll play a little bit more of this, because we are planning on playing something like completely in Japanese to try to practice our Japanese. So hopefully the it won't take a setback like TUNIC did. The other games I'm playing are The Cruel King and The Great Hero. Haven't made much progress on this one because of time, pretty much. Variable Barricade, I played, I want to say like a couple of hours in, more like and the thing is that this game is different from other automatic games in the sense that like the story is like separated in boards, and you have like to clear a board like to go to the next board. And I'm still not sure why they structured this like that, because it kind of like breaks the, I guess it kind of breaks the immersion for me. Like, oh, I'm done with this chapter, and hey, it throws me back like to the chapter section. And sometimes it doesn't really need to do that, but it does, which is weird. But still, like right now I am on one of the characters like level 1 board. From what I've heard, if you clear the level 3 board of a character, then you get like one of their endings. I'm still not sure like how you select the route at this point in time. And you're like supposed to like clear like all the level 1 boards before you can continue on with this like overall story of the game. It has been still a lot of fun. Like the game is hilarious. Each character is a walking disaster. Like one of them is a gold digger, and the other one was like almost prosecuted for marriage fraud or something like that. And like it's still like the main character's grandfather. It's like, hey, they have something that you don't have, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, because I don't know what grandfather is trying to have everybody learn from these walking disasters right now, because all I can see is their faults. I cannot see any redeeming qualities yet. And to be honest, at this point in the Cupid Parasite playthrough, I was like, hey, this character is kind of like a disaster, but at least they have some redeeming qualities. I am not seeing that here. Anyways, still, the game is hilarious. At the very least, the one saving grace for me is that Sumui, the best friend, is like best friend ever, like in any Otome game, and I love her. And the game is just plain funny. So yeah. And the other one that I'm playing, the other game that I'm playing is Fire Emblem Fates Birthright. I am going with the Hoshito route first. And well, this is like kind of like the easier route of the 3. And I already see like a downgrade on how the story, the overall story being told compared to Awakening. Like I do remember like quite a bit from the Fates trilogy, and it can be a hot mess story-wise, but the gameplay is fun. So if you play this, play for the gameplay. Don't expect like a grandiose story or anything like that.
I am just a Fire Emblem Fates apologist, honestly. I think the whole thing is amazing. Like, I don't care, I love it.
It's okay. It's okay, Alex. But personally, I do feel like there are like a couple of things that they kind of like, hey, Fire Emblem Awakening did this, so we kind of have to do it with this one too, even if it doesn't make sense. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you know.
What? Yeah, the fucking babies and stuff. It doesn't make any sense.
That
Really?
doesn't make any sense. Though having your own like castle with your with the buildings you actually need is a lot of help. Though I have to say, they got rid of most of the weapon breaking mechanics. Like the only things that I know that like are fun use only or like have a limited amount of uses are like the staves, the um like the seals, like the master seal, the friendship seal, and all those kind of things, and the healing items. But like the weapons have no durability system, which makes me wonder, why do you make them like so readily available now with the jobs that you can have on your castle that you can access at any time? Yet they are unbreakable, so you don't have as much of a reason to go and shop for weapons. So I'm like, what was the idea there? The castle invasions are a fun mechanic though. Like I'm still not sure like what triggers them, and I already played all the Fates game when they came out, and I'm replaying them. I'm still not sure like when the invasions happen. But defending my castle and having like those more, I guess, defensive structures in place in case of an emergency makes me like build this stuff like in a more strategic kind of way instead of just like, hey, there's still some space here, just put that building there. And the like they kind of got rid of you like being able to select like what a specific part of the map. Like you cannot like walk on the overworld map like you used to in Awakening or as you can on Echoes, which it was like, okay, I get it. Like having like shops in every single like point of the map and trying to memorize like where everything was kind of confusing. But I still like the ability of like moving the map, walking toward an enemy and battling it, or just like finding the secret shops or like not the secret shops, like the temporary shops I used to set up in Awakening and getting like a huge discount on a very rare item. I kind of miss that. But what Fire Emblem Fates does with the castle system, it's something I really dig because you have everything like there available for you to interact with without like having to walk all over the place. Now to the thing I kind of hinted at when playing Fire Emblem Awakening, the pair-up system. It's still broken. It's more what's the word for it? Predictable of how it works or when it's gonna work. But it's still kind of broken. And the thing is that now if you have the two units like on the same slot, one of them will give like a bonus to the other in certain stats, which still broken as fuck because it will allow you sometimes to outspeed anything and everything in the map. So you can pretty much wipe any fun enemy of your choosing. And I think every fifth attack from an enemy is one that will you be able to block. No questions asked. But what I really like about the pair-up mechanic is that enemies can do it too now. So in that way, it is more balanced. Because that's the thing with Awakening. You were the only one able to do pair-up, so you can sweep everything on your way. But since enemies have the same like shielding mechanic, if you're attacking an enemy that is paired up like in the same space with another enemy, you cannot take advantage of the offensive pair up mechanic. That is when you have two units like adjacent to each other. So that is something that I think it was changed for the better, because now I have to think, hey, there's these two enemies close together. What's the best way for me to group my units? Or do I do I pair them up together at all and just keep them adjacent? And yeah, I think I am around chapter 13 on Fireman Fates Birthright. I don't know if I'll have it beaten by next week because homework is a thing and I don't like it. But I think at the very least, it's not gonna take me more than a couple more weeks to beat.
Nice.
So yeah, those are all the games that I've been playing. Why don't we roll out to our topic of the week?
Yes. Good old strategy guides, which really, like, I mean, last week we were talking about instruction manuals and whatnot. So I feel like this is a pretty natural continuation there. I think maybe to start, just like where strategy guides are as a thing nowadays, they're gone is basically the issue, right?
They've gone online ultimately. It's yeah.
Well, because Prima Games shut down in 2018, right? Which was like the biggest, pretty much. I know there's Brady Games as well, but I think Brady Games is gone, isn't it? I don't know.
I think they might have folded into another publisher. There was also Piggyback. They don't exist anymore. But yeah, Brady's the one I knew of. I thought they might still be going in some capacity, but there's just not a market for a physical anymore, and that is it's ultimately the same as what we said last week, and it's sad in a lot of the same ways. I had a really strong memory growing up with Final Fantasy III for the Nintendo DS, of cover to cover leafing through the strategy guide for that game and peeling through and using various parts of it on the way to beating that game. And the art in it was wonderful. I think that was a Brady Games one, the art in it was wonderful. All the stats were really, really useful. It had maps for all the floors, and everything sort of linked back to everything else. It was perfect. Excellent. You had something to throw in.
Yeah. Well, so Prima was under Random House, right? Prima Games.
Okay.
And Brady Games was under Penguin Group, which those two groups in 2013 came together to become Penguin Random House, right? And when that happened, Prima and Brady were joined together, and then they were closed down in 2018. So Prima and Brady were put together, and they both vanished.
Went down at the same. Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, they were effectively, because there's an interesting article from a guy who makes strategy guides, and was on contract for Prima in 2017. He was talking about how, like, nowadays he was like, there's maybe, like, he said, like, there'd be about like 60 books that would be made, but that was in 2017, so that changed real fast the next year.
And they picked the wrong fucking horses as well. I remember walking into our equivalent of GameStop in the UK is just called Game, and they would have strategies for like Halo 5 and like the newest Call of Duty. It's like, nobody needs that guide. Why are you paying people to write that guide?
Well, they said the ones that sold the most were like Skyrim, GTA, like these large big games that have, and ultimately this is sort of the issue too, right? Is that, like, the games that actually require them, it sounded like they were just kind of like I can understand why you would have a guide that people would buy for both Skyrim and for GTA, especially if you're adding like G Online in that too, because like those are huge, expansive games. So of course you would want to have, you might want to look at a guide at some point for those. But for fucking COD, who in their right mind needs to look at a guide for COD? I mean, like, and like, it's not like it could even be tips on what to do in the multiplayer, because that shit changes so fast. Like, it would be outdated immediately, right?
Oh, but I mean that as I understand it was it. So like you have maps for the single player levels to the extent that there are, like all the locations with all the intels, but more importantly, stats for all the weapons going into multiplayer, maps for the multiplayer map, and you can almost make the case that early doors it's a useful head start to have a physical version of all the maps to familiarize yourself with. Ditto guns, but they tweak those numbers. That, like you say, it's out of date in a fortnight. No pun intended. Well, pun very much intended, but yeah.
Well, exactly, right. And so, like, and it is a shame because, like, right now, right, I'm playing Majora's Mask using one of Prima games, I think, guide. Maybe it's a Brady Games one. I don't know. I can't remember. But I'm using one of those guides on my phone, at least, and it is incredible because, like, it adds this level of just artistry to the guides, right? Like
Yeah.
all of these beautiful maps that are created, that they're not, that's like, they construct those, right? Like, especially at that point, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're gonna pull a JPEG from the game file. No, that's not how, like
No.
they had to make all those maps, and there's just so much graphic design placed into it, which makes it very, very appealing to go through and use. Whereas like, and obviously we'll get to this, but like the digital world and era has obviously changed things quite a bit. But I also find a lot of like, good old game facts and IGN wikis, there's tons of them. There's tons of them out there. It's often just pretty plain text,
Yeah.
which is sometimes helpful, but in a visual medium, not always that helpful. Like, how many times have you used, like, case in point, I was playing Super Mario RPG and I pulled up a guide a few times because there's a lot of like hidden stuff you can miss, and they're describing directions in an isometric fucking game, which they'll be like, go left, and I was like, what do you mean left?
Move left, yeah.
Like left from the entrance, or like left on the screen, because left on the screen ain't really left. You're like, it's like, sure would be nice to have. I guess I should have just like downloaded a real old guide from that, because I bet you there's a really good one. That's my loss, but
Fun diversion on that. Nintendo recently copyright claimed someone who had scanned in a Super Mario 64 guide from 1996 that is no longer in print or available anywhere.
that's lame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck Nintendo and their lawyers. But yeah, no, this is definitely the rub, because and this is interesting when you talk about like what games get paper strategy guides or got paper strategy guides. The fun thing with game facts is that there are games that have no right to have a guide in terms of install size, that have really comprehensive walkthroughs.
Yeah.
And God love the community that puts those together. Like, I remember playing an old RPG called Contact way back in the day. Excellent RPG. Old Grasshopper situation on the DS made really good use of all the unique things about that system. There was a big fuck off digital guide written for that game. Can't have sold more than 50,000 copies. There's no way that it could have ever justified a paper guide. It's the kind of game that probably needed a guide, and the community answered that question. I don't know about you guys. I find that I will often look for a paper guide first. Even for older games, like when I was playing Vagrant Story, I bought a paper copy of that guide because I was like, that's the era where I'd really enjoy having all that art and that everything else. And for the time I played the game, I absolutely did. Generally speaking, depending on the game, I will skip that step and go straight to finding like a written guide or a game facts or something like that. Where no such thing is available, I will often go to YouTube and watch a Let's Play and watch how someone else did it. And I think that's kind of the end game, because you want to see how to do it. What better way than watching someone do it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think at this point in time, we have a wealth of options, right? And which is awesome. Like it's great that I can, do this in many different ways. But I do think like, yeah, it's a bit of that like depends on what you need thing, right? Like I would never ever ever suggest that we should go back to the era of only having paper guides, because obviously that's not
Sure.
not ideal. But yeah, I do feel like at the moment, I think we're a little like out of balance. You know what I mean? Like how,
Yeah. Okay.
and we saw that a lot with like even like limited run games and things, like doing more game prints and whatnot. It feels a little bit like, because like actually I think about, so Phil Summers, he does those hand drawn game guides, which unfortunately Nintendo put a claim on.
Did they really? Oh,
Yeah, that
that fucking
Kickstarter. Yeah.
sucks.
You can get it for free though. Like he's got it hosted on different sites that you can download it for free. But like,
So he's not making money. It's not yet. Fuck
yeah,
Nintendo and fuck their lawyers.
I
Yeah.
know, right? The physical is what you really want. Like I have his physical Legend of Zelda one, and it's so beautiful. And like those got so much support, right? Because people are like, oh yeah, I want artwork of this game I fucking love, along with a guide. It's nice, right? Like it's like, this is a fun way to go through and experience this. And so at the moment I feel like we just have such a lack, and because like I also understand that like there's just not, it's just not super viable, because you sometimes have to figure out like will this game have a big enough fan base to even warrant doing this crazy huge thing? Which is also why maybe this should just be a Kickstarter thing more often. Like, kickstart some strategy guides. I'd be into it. You know what I mean? Like, but then also the question is, do you have the permission? Because it's like it's all this shit, right? Of like, now we enter into this weird rights question of like,
And this is where those big publishing companies for the strategy guides had a really useful in, because it's like, well, you know us, we know you, and it simplifies that process, and I'm sure streamlines it because they have contacts at various publishers.
right?
Hmm.
Yep.
And then that's the issue, because you're like, well, oh yeah, I'm just looking right now at the Super Mario RPG guide, and I'm like, damn it, why didn't I use the paper one? It's so awesome, it's beautiful.
Mhm. But I suppose it's interesting when you say, you know, the art's a big draw, because art books are absolutely still a thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Albeit, having said that out loud, the amount of work that's involved in an art book versus a strategy guide, it's apples and oranges. Obviously, you have the print costs for same, and it can't cost much to pay someone to put that guide together, but it costs much more than the nothing it costs to get a graphic designer to spend an afternoon throwing all the concept art together in a book setup, which you would need to do anyway. In a strategy guide, you would need someone to graphic design that setup as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the wrinkle.
Yeah. And the reality with art books, and like, I love art books, but let's be fucking real here. You open an art book once and you look through all the pages and you go, that was pretty, and you put it away. Unless, I don't know, if you're an artist, maybe you go back and you look at the image for inspiration sometimes, but that's
Or if
it.
you're sad like me, and every few months you go through your Shin Megami Tensei and Persona art books, which I absolutely do.
Right? And so,
There
but
I am, the artist that
Mm.
looks like the at the art books for inspiration and study sessions.
exactly. And
We
so
have the whole gamut here on the podcast.
exactly, that I understand. But for me, it's like the beauty with the strategy guide is that it's art and utility, right? Like, there is
Sure.
that beauty within it. So you can go and you can look, you can even just like, some of the strategy guides are fun to just go and scroll through and look at, right? But you also are like, I can also actually use this when I play the game. And that to me is just, I love that. It's such a beautiful combination of the two, you know? Because like you said, the art books have such a really niche, I would say I'd say those are even more niche than strategy guides, right?
Sure.
Because not only do you need to enjoy the game, but like really you got to really enjoy the game. Versus like anyone who wants to play can, enjoy a strategy guide. But anyway, I love art books as well, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I love art books, but especially like the 3-book series that they did for The Legend of Zelda, that was Herald Historia, Herald Encyclopedia,
Sitting on my shelf.
and Arts and Artifacts. There's so much information right there that it's just plain interesting about the development of the game, that I found myself like looking at those like more often than the regular art books.
Yeah.
Yep, that and Creating a Champion.
That in what? Sorry.
Creating a Champion, that is the Breath of the Wild book.
Yeah, that's some nice shit.
There's some 13 Sentinels ones stuck in Japan, and I'm really, really waiting for them to one day decide to translate those.
Aw.
Maybe the Switch release will take off and it'll be like the nudge they need. Probably not, but maybe.
It's tough too with strategy guides, because like, if you want to get your hands on one now, the reality is that they're in bad shape. Because like,
Yeah.
they were used, like it wasn't even just like a thing you put on the shelf. It's like, no man, I used this as a kid to actually beat this damn game, so my strategy guide is wrinkly or broken.
Or they weren't used because it was a stupid one. Like I
True.
foolishly, albeit very cheaply, picked up an Alan Wake strategy guide. That game does not need a strategy guide.
Like, I remember looking at the Warcraft 3 and Warcraft 3 The Frozen Throne strategy guides that came with the game. Those things have seen better days. I don't even know where they are anymore. And
Go sorry.
oh, and I think the only strategy guide that I actually went out and purchased was the Pokemon X and Y strategy guide, because it had like all the locations of all the hidden objects. And then I gave that to my nephew because he was playing the game and he was like, okay, so you don't get lost, you can use this. And oh my god, that thing has been seen better days too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The useful ones get used. That Alan Wake guide almost box fresh because obviously it's Alan Wake. It's a linear action game. Nobody needed a guide for that game. That's not a thing that should have happened ever.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I think back when I was younger, I would go buy a game and they would be like EB Games would always have, or GameStop now, whatever. They would always have the strategy guides up whenever you're buying a new game. And they're like, "You want the strategy guide?" And I was always just
Yeah.
like, as a young kid, I was like, "Why would I fucking need that? I can go online," you know?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I just didn't have that appreciation for it yet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And I do think that that's something that develops with time, which is also why, if I'm trying to envision a world, like you're saying, where these could come back, and I do think it's possible. Like, it is again in that kickstarted vein, you know.
Yeah.
It's and it has to be for like sort of the niche audiences. Like, I would happily. I wonder if it exists actually. I would happily take like a Hollow Knight strategy guide just to own that because like there's a game that could use it. Metroidvanias, all these roguelites, they could really fucking use some of these guides, you know. And I would love to just own that physical thing. I'd even like they make some of those smaller ones. Oh, they're so pretty. Anyway, it's just like niche collector shit at this point, right? But like they feel like such an appreciation of the game, and the amount of work that has to go into them is absurd, right? Because not only do you have to write compelling text for these things, like, and they also have to be easy to follow, good explanations. You also actually have to figure out all the fucking secrets because like, that's not a thing that's just like, it's not that the company's just like, hey buddy, here's a list of all the secrets in our games. They don't know. Like, they've got them, but you think they make a big old list? Like, hell no, that's not how game development works. They don't just have like a text file where it's like, and in this level you find this and you know what I mean? Like, some companies who are super organized might have some of that stuff, but not for the most part, right? Like, there's maybe design docs, but they're all over the place, right? Like, it's not, and they're probably not going to give you all their design docs because some are maybe outdated, right? Like, they might give you something and be like, oh, actually, no, wait, we changed that in the recent thing because we realized it didn't work, you know? Like, anyway, it's just one of those things where I'm like, the amount of work involved in creating one of these is, I mean, that's why IGN has fucking an entire team where they pay people to create these wikis, right?
But they can do that because they're getting recurring clicks.
Yeah.
And it pays for it that way. And that's where the incentive model is just completely different.
Exactly.
And it's not just per time you look. It's those pages are set up so you're clicking through multiple pages to get the information you need. And as such, you count as multiple views for that advert.
Yeah. And for them to, like, you know, they have an even better, you know, honestly, man, love it if they could partner with someone and just like share, like, here's the guides that get clicked on the most for us. Go make a physical one. And like, you could make bank off that.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Use our thing. Do that. I don't know. I just want them back.
They were like the Zelda dungeon ones that those are out of this world because they have both the imagery and also they have a huge interactive map for Breath of the Wild where you can just like it's pretty much a giant interactive checklist with everything in the game, and it is the amount of work it probably took is out of this world.
Yeah. So, Rick, you mentioned you had a couple growing up. Is there any others that you can think of that were you're just like, these were the best?
God, that Final Fantasy 3 one, truthfully, was the one that jumped out at me. When I played through Soul Silver recently, I did pick up a strategy guide for that. That was a godsend. It had the whole Pokédex in the back, so various stats, moves, type weaknesses, and stuff like that. That was really useful to have. It also had a pull-out map, which was, again, quite helpful. It was two-sided. It had, like, the region you were in for the game proper on one side, and then, like, the bit that opens up at the end of the game on the other side. So it gave you sort of holistic coverage that way. I'm trying to think what other ones I had. I had one for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Blue and Red Rescue Team on the DS. That was really useful. that rubbish Alan Wake one that I mentioned. The Vagrant Story one was pretty good. I wasn't necessarily a fan of the way it was laid out, but the art for that game is something else. And from a visual perspective, it really popped.
Mm.
I think that might have been it.
Hmm.
Oh, the other one I had was for Phantom Hourglass on the DS.
Ooh, nice.
And that was good fun
Mhm.
because there are a lot of little secrets in that game, a lot of things sort of tucked and hidden away, and different things that unlocked in completely opposite parts of the map when you got certain items. So that was a useful one to have around. I may well leave a comment under this episode if I remember any more. And if you guys have any ones that you want to tell us about, any particularly good or bad or useless ones, when you're hitting the like button under this video, as you do, I'm sure, after every podcast episode you listen to, why not throw a comment there as well?
Well, I think too, like it's interesting. I think a lot of the best strategy guides ended up being Nintendo related properties, honestly. And like
Probably.
I think that comes in part with like Nintendo Power often made them as well. And like they made some really nice ones. Like I do recommend for anyone who wants to play Super Mario RPG to take a look at that strategy guide because it's awesome. And like it has like a whole thing on the enemies and everything. I'm kind of pissed off that I didn't use that one, but anyway. Like when I think back, everything we're mentioning, it's like I can't really think of many. Like I'm sure there were some pretty good ones for Sony games as well, like probably some of the bigger RPGs. Like I'm sure there's some good ones for like the Final Fantasies and whatnot. But it does just feel to me like this is also strategy guides are kind of for specific genres, right? Like I do think RPGs in general seem to be the ones that benefit the most from them because they have such complex systems and usually such intense amounts of like enemies and like things that aren't always very explicit within the game, right? Like think about it nowadays it's a bit easier, but like I can think back to even a number of games where it's like not always super clear what you're supposed to do next. Not always super clear like how enemies are affecting you or how you're affecting enemies, right? And like stats and whatnot, that honestly having a strategy guide is like pretty useful to be like, okay, this boss has how much health? Oh, it has this much health. Okay. And like whatever it's weak, like this kind of deal where it like helps just give you information about the game, which could potentially be a failing of the games themselves, but hey, that's what the strategy guides are there for. It's real nice.
And I think that really is the irony. The ones that require the most work to make happen, and as such are kind of the least likely to happen, are the
Because of
ones
how
that are the
rich
most
they are
useful.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
Oh, the games that usually really need like a strategy guide because of how complex their systems are usually the games that are very niche.
And the ones where like no one's gonna make that strategy guide. And you're like,
Yep.
Mhm.
Which is sad. Well, they're at the very least, GameFAQs is there to save the day, but
but even then, have you
really,
ever?
yeah.
I remember using game fags, and I think it was Car Battler Joe. Maybe it was like the old Game Boy game. And
GBA, yeah.
yeah, I wanted to look for some info, and I remember finding it, and the dude literally like it just ended. At one point, it was like, I'll finish this later. It just didn't
And
ever
you never
finish it.
did.
And that happens a fair bit
Oh.
on like obscurish games and GameFAQ. Sometimes you'll just have someone who like really valiantly tried, and then you can see the game beat them, and it's like at that point it just ends, and you're also like, oh yeah, this is pretty tough. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, wow, this person was just like, no man, I'm fucking done. I can't do this anymore. Yeah,
Man. Somewhere that person's got like a partner and kids now, and they're just like living their
exactly.
best life. Car Battler Joe
They're like
doesn't need
putting it
anything from anymore.
because that's what that to me is like. I really kind of hope that's what it was like. Like they were playing it and they were like, why am I doing this? Just at that moment, they're like, no, I'm done. I'm done. But that also comes from someone who is like a absolute just like chronic project starter, not finisher. So I get it.
Mhm.
Ouch. That hit a little bit too close to home. I don't know, like there's some genuinely crazy folks on GameFAQs. Like someone did like a platinum trophy guide for Persona 4 Golden like on the first run, or like having like all the social links and what was the other thing? Like having all the social links like ready on the first run and maxing out all the stats too. And I don't know how many runs that poor person did to get like the like all the possible bonuses, like those times where you get like a possibly an extra point from something, or like the super meatball, like having the exact stats that you need, like raised, like to pretty much like get there. I don't know how many runs that person did, but they are amazing because I actually used that guide. I didn't finish the game, but I used that guide. But the time investment, it was not doing that ever for a game. Then you have like the folks at the Otome community. I love them. You're the best. Thank you, Otome Kitten, for letting me 100% so many Otome games.
You know,
like,
oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh no, this is kind of a tangent. So if you want to finish something there, you go down.
No, I was gonna say, like, even if sometimes like visual novels in general don't have like the most complex systems ever, having to replay the game like many times to get like the desired outcome, especially if they don't have like any clear signal that yay, the thing you did was the correct thing to do, can get a little bit like grindy and not fun. So props to everyone that does like visual novel guides, especially like in the Otome community, because it is niche. And also, I don't know who was the crazy bastard that did the Stains Kid 100% guide, but they are good. Because that is one convoluted visual novel to try to 100%.
Yeah. Do you want to know something insane? Do you want to know? Guess when GameFAQs was made?
I'm going to say 98.
You're close, Rick. You're close.
Yeah?
1995.
Fuck off.
Yeah, 1995. It was made as a
I wasn't
website.
even born at that point.
Ooh, yeah, I was a 3-year-old, so I was getting there. That's insane, right? Like, I mean, what? Yeah, that to me like is wild. You think about how old that is. So like, I guess really, because we often talk about how like GameFAQs and like, you know, the rise of these kind of killed strategy guides, but I'm like, is that true? I don't know. They're around a long time. It's like a very slow transition. Maybe kind of like the Netflix blockbuster model, right? Where you're like, it happens and then you hold on for dear life for as long as you possibly can until it's just over.
When GameFAQs starts, it's definitely more like a question board type thing as well, especially those days of the internet. And then it morphs into what it is that we're familiar with at the time of recording in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder when it actually kind of morphs into when it kind of morphed into like basically just you know, oh my god, what am I trying to say here? Like
when it became proper
guides. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, well, I guess for a long time, because it was always the FAQ, so at least that was kind of like, I guess because that in those days, that was the supplement, right? I have a specific question about a game. Let's go see if someone's asked it or if I can ask it, right? Which is like, that's a nice service. And then I kind of wonder at what point was it like, okay, now, you know, we're just going to make full actual guides, because a lot of those GameFAQs guides, right, they're just text-based for the most part, right? I don't think, do any of them have images? I don't think so, do they?
Not that I know of. I know a lot of them have a bit of ASCII art, but I don't think any of them have images.
Yeah, it's all ASCII, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also why I find personally GameFAQs guides are hell on earth. I mean, like, if you have Control F going, that's fine. But oh my god, when I open one of those, I'm just like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Bless those who do them, but I often find those who have made guides on there, the guide often exists somewhere else as well. So like, unless they're really old. Anyway, Does anyone have any last thoughts? I think that's kind of we've waxed lyrical on strategy guides now for a while, but
Yeah. The strategy guide is dead. Long live the strategy guide.
exactly.
Yep.
Nintendo, please let Phil Summers make more of those hand-drawn ones. I really like them. And I want physicals. Damn it. I wish they'd just like partner with them or some shit, but they won't. But it'd be great.
That's way too much like common sense.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They'd all make money.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
No, we all just have to be sad. All right, well, it's time.
Not for long though, because we're about to play. How Long to Beat the Game, featuring 2 competing segues from Alex and myself.
Yeah, jeez. That's fine. But it's me this time.
Alex, yes, it certainly is. In the new format, so very, very briefly, for those of you who might have missed an episode and don't know, How Long to Beat the Game has changed. So we now take it in turns to host. So Alex is going to randomize a game. Paula and I, in this instance, are going to send him privately our guesses for how long it would take to beat main plus, and 100% for this game. Whoever is the closest gets a point. And there are 2 points up for grabs in the
bonus round
category of Alex choosing. Yeah, the lucky dip category, let's call it. So he might pick how many people are currently playing this game. What is the lowest time for this game to beat? As I did last week, what's the percentage of retirements? And whoever gets closest to that gets 2 points. So there's a maximum of 5 points up for grabs per player. So without further ado, Alex, what game are we talking about this week?
All right, so this week we're actually playing Mischief Makers for the N64.
Oh, that rings a bell.
Yeah, this is a treasure game.
That doesn't ring a bell.
And Mischief Makers stars a robotic cleaning maid named Marina on a mission to rescue her kidnapped creator from the clutches of an evil emperor. As with most evil folk, the emperor isn't about to just hand over the aging scientist and has amassed an army to stop Marina at all costs. So Marina has to travel through a number of worlds.
Is this the funky 3D one? Sorry, I know I've jumped in the middle.
It's 3D, yeah. Well, I was done there, yeah. But it was published by Nintendo and Enix in North America in 1997. It came to the EU in 98, interestingly. But yeah. Apparently,
yeah, that's absolutely the one I was thinking of. Yes, I do know this one.
It looks kind of neat.
I'm planning like a treasure like chronology playthrough. So Mischief Makers has come across my mind in that sense as well. So
and it was only for the N64, so this was a platform exclusive. Which, to be honest, a lot of N64 games were only for the N64. So didn't have a lot of ports.
No.
So what do you think? Send me privately, and we should find out. Oh, and for the listeners, a reminder as well that basically after a set amount of episodes, whoever has the most points at the end, and I think we said we're going to do 3 rounds total, so probably like 9 episodes. Whoever ends up with the most points at that point gets to decide a kind of category of games that we all have to play together. Kind of like a Tome, but could be totally different. Who knows? So there's a lot on the line
So maybe
here.
different.
Yeah. Or
right,
Paula will win.
I've sent my votes in. Knowing it's a treasure game, I've got a pretty good bead on what kind of length we're talking. Again, unfortunately for Paula, I have a bit of an idea what this game involves because I've been looking into playing it. So
who knows? Maybe
I
Paula
need
will
to do my
surprise you.
best. Atomize on the line.
Wow, you know what they say about pride coming before a fall. So let's see.
And actually, while you are doing that, I'm going to give you my bonus one here. Oh, and I have a bunch of different. Yeah, okay. So I want you to tell me what was the most recent review score for this game.
Oh, okay. Is that out of 10?
Yeah. They're out of 10, right? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say...
Most recent review score.
I've sent you that as well.
Sounds good. I got it.
About to send it.
I was gonna do like when was the oldest review, but I like the scores more.
I'm hoping there's a comment on the most recent review because I always think it's interesting to see how people find older games when they come back to them.
Oh, there's definitely there's a comment. All right.
Uh-oh.
There.
No, the way you're saying that is not making me super confident about my score.
Oh no,
I was
I
scared
think
that I understood it, but
I think I made that too loaded because it's
You definitely
nothing
loaded
like that. Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay, let's take a
Not
look
at all.
here. So I've got both of them in. So all right, what we got here. So for main, Paula said 7 hours, and Rick said 5 hours, and the main story is indeed 5 hours. So for that one, Rick, you get a point. Next up, Rick said for main plus 6 hours, and Paula said 10 hours.
I am
But
so screwed.
You're very screwed, Paula. The main plus is 6.5 hours. That's another point to Rick. For the 100%, Paula went for 15 hours, and Rick went for 10 hours, and the completionist is 11 hours. So once
This
around,
game's pretty short.
yeah, Rick threw this up. And okay, for the most recent review, Rick said 6 out of 10, and Paula said 7 out of 10.
Ooh.
The score was 6 out of 10.
No!
Yeah, which means Rick, you're
Oh,
right up
no.
there. I just added your points. You got 5 points this round, which means Rick is at 8
Clean
points.
sweep.
I'm at 5, and Paula's at 3. And I'm going to read you the review here so you can see what it says here, which I actually think is pretty fun. So it says, fun little game. Definitely not a must play in all caps, though, which is weird considering how much I like most of Treasure's other offerings. The
Oh.
platforming is honestly more action puzzly rather than just flat out action like stuff such as Gunstar Heroes, Dynamite Heady, or Alien Soldier. So maybe that might be why I didn't gravitate so much towards it. The boss fights are really fun though, as always with Treasure games. Characters and art are all done by the same guy that did Guardian Heroes and Gunstar Heroes. So if you like that aesthetic, then there's more of that here too. All in all, a rather good time, but nothing super noteworthy that you gotta go out of your way to play. And that's from Super Mama Luigi. So thank you, Super Mama Luigi. That's a great little
Honestly.
review.
That is a lovely review, and yeah, definitely from screenshots, it does look a little bit more Klonoa-y than any of Treasure's other stuff, which is an interesting thing for me.
Yeah.
Worth saying, if anyone is doing 3DS purchases before that shop closes at the time of recording, M2 did an exceptional port of Gunstar Superheroes to the 3DS with a couple of extra sort of options. The 3D on it's really good. It's the definitive way to play that game, and it's an excellent game. So definitely be looking out for that if you guys are buying while you can,
Also,
or download it legally. You can totally do that.
Speaking of Klonoa, there's this Klonoa RPG that was stuck in Japan, and it just got a fan translation like a week
On
or so ago.
GBA, yeah, I
Yeah.
downloaded it recently.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So there you go. Fan translation. Oh, actually, this is not for points or anything, but do either of you want to guess when the oldest review is?
Oh gosh, I want to say
Hmm.
2013.
Oh, just give me a number because I can't
Oh,
calculate it.
okay. I'm going to say 4 out of 10.
Oh, like years ago. Give me years ago. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Oh, so 13 is 9 years ago.
9 years
2013
ago.
is
Okay.
9
What
years
do you
First,
think,
the
Paula?
last. Can you repeat the question? I was
Yeah.
like,
How many
looking
years
into
ago
the
do you
horizon.
think the last review was? Like the oldest review?
Oh,
That was my bad. Just horribly.
I'm gonna say 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Well, it's 9.5 years ago. So, Rick,
damn.
you're older
Whoa.
than one. Yeah. When you think about it, though, this game came out in 1997. So
That's the wrong skew, though. The site's only been live like 10, 11 years.
I know
so-
exactly. But that's why I was thinking. If it's only been around 10, 11 years, the site itself, then I guess it makes sense that this would be done within the first few years.
True,
No, but
true.
it's cool that even then, people are still going back and revisiting this game because even at that point,
Mhm.
like the N64 wasn't a widely available thing. I'm pretty sure Mischief Makers has never been made available on any of the sort of digital archival services of any kind. It's not
Right.
like a eShop sort of thing. But yeah, that's awesome.
That review is really funny too because it clearly relates to the game itself, but I don't understand because it just says a fun platformer that really makes you have fun, living up to the theme of shake, shake, shake.
Yeah, that's the mechanic. The mechanic
Is that the
involves
mechanic?
shaking things. Yeah, that's the mechanic.
Oh, okay.
If I remember correctly, you move with the D-pad and like you use the analog stick to do the shake.
Well, there
Like
you
I said,
go.
I'm planning to play this game. I've looked into it.
Maybe I'll need to play this game on I'll like set up the N64 there on. I could probably get an emulator work on the Wii U or something. I don't know.
We have options.
Yeah,
You
Mischief
can
Maker.
always get an emulator working on the Wii U.
Exactly. There'll always be a way. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next time. I think this was the first, so like we've done now 3 rounds of this new game.
We have, yeah.
So we've got 2 more sections of rounds to go through, and then it'll be see who wins. All right, toodaloo, folks.
Bye.
Bye.